Since the beginning of time, the earth has carried secrets too dark to name. Beneath the surface of Scripture, hidden between verses and silences, lies a story almost erased, a tale of beings so powerful, so strange, that the world itself trembled beneath their presence. This is the story of the NEPHILIM, the giants the Bible tried to hide. They were born before the flood, in an age when the heavens still touched the earth, and when the line between mortal and divine was dangerously thin. It was a time when man walked with angels, and angels began to envy men. The ancient texts call them the Watchers. They were not like the cherubim or the messengers who brought light. They were guardians, sent to watch over humanity, to guide, to observe. But what begins as guidance often turns into desire. For the sons of heaven looked upon the daughters of earth, and they saw that they were beautiful. And in that beauty, desire was born, a desire forbidden by the one who created both heaven and earth. They descended, not in a blaze of fire, but in secrecy, like falling stars swallowed by the clouds. 200 of them, led by one whose name echoes through forbidden scrolls, Semjaza, the watcher who dared to challenge heaven's command. He gathered his brethren upon the summit of Mount Hermon, and there they swore an oath to take for themselves wives among the daughters of men, to abandon their heavenly estate, and to teach mankind what was never meant to be known. It was the first rebellion not born from pride, but from lust, the corruption of love twisted into possession. And when they came to earth, the world was never the same. The women bore children to them, beings of immense strength and strange beauty. They were the NEPHILIM, the giants of old, the men of renown, creatures that walked like gods among mortals, but carried within them the seed of corruption. They built cities of stone and blood. They ruled with cruelty and awe. Their hunger was not only for food, but for power, for flesh, for worship. The earth groaned under their feet. Rivers ran red. Mountains echoed with the cries of the oppressed. Humanity, once innocent, began to forget the voice of its creator. They worshipped the giants, fearing their wrath, desiring their favor. Altars rose to their names, and where altars rise, darkness follows. The Watchers, who had once been radiant, now wore shadows. They taught mankind forbidden arts, the crafting of weapons, the mixing of enchantments, the painting of eyes to seduce, the reading of the stars to control destiny. Knowledge became power, power became corruption, and corruption became the language of earth. Heaven watched in silence, but silence is not the absence of anger. The ground trembled as creation itself cried out for justice. Ancient texts tell us that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, walked with God. He saw what others could not. He saw the sin of the Watchers and the terror of the NEPHILIM. And one night, in a dream of fire and storm, a voice called his name. Enoch was lifted beyond the clouds, past the gates of the stars, and brought before the throne of the Most High. There he beheld the judgment of heaven. The Lord spoke, "These are not my sons. They have defiled what was pure. They have made the earth bleed. Their offspring shall bring destruction, and their names shall be erased." Enoch was sent back, not as a prophet of mercy, but as a messenger of doom. He went to the Watchers and said, "You have looked upon what was forbidden. You have taken what was not yours. Your children will devour the earth, and the earth will devour them in return." But they did not repent. They begged him to plead for them. But heaven had already closed its gates. The Watchers trembled. The NEPHILIM raged. And mankind stood caught between gods and monsters. The days that followed were like no other. Storms blackened the skies. The sun grew dim. The earth shook beneath the weight of sin. The NEPHILIM consumed all that was before them, beasts, men, even one another. Their strength was unmatched, their hunger endless. And the Watchers, their fathers, could only watch in horror as chaos devoured creation. Enoch's warning spread like whispers carried by wind. Some believed, most mocked, but one man listened, a righteous man named Noah. Noah lived in a world where innocence had vanished. He walked among ruins of faith. but his heart remained pure. And when heaven looked upon the earth, it saw only one man worthy of preservation. But before the flood, before the ark, before the rain, there was the sound of wings being torn from angels. The watchers were cast down, bound in darkness, sealed in the depths of the earth until the day of judgment. Their cries echoed through caverns no light could reach. And their sons, the giants, were left to face the wrath of heaven. The story was buried, the scrolls hidden. The priests of later ages would call it myth, a legend meant to frighten children. But fragments remained, in Genesis, in Enoch, in the whispers of ancient tongues. Reminders of a time when heaven touched earth, and the world nearly drowned in its own desire. And so began the age of silence before the storm. The Nephilim ruled the earth with iron hands and eyes of fire. But even they could sense it, the shift in the wind, the gathering of clouds, the whisper of a flood that would erase their names. They mocked heaven. They raised their towers higher. They believed themselves immortal. But the sky had already begun to darken, and the same rain they had never feared would become the sea that buried them. The sun rose over a broken world. Its light, once golden, now fell upon blood-stained fields and shattered cities. The giants had come to rule, and under their reign, the earth groaned. The Nephilim, children of heaven and earth, towered above mankind. Their shadows stretched across the valleys. Their footsteps cracked the soil. Where they walked, silence followed, and where they spoke, nations trembled. They built monuments of stone and bone, temples that reached the clouds, carved with symbols that no man could read. Their altars smoked with offerings. Their thrones dripped with sacrifice. The air itself seemed to choke on the weight of their pride. The watchers had been cast down, bound beneath the earth, but their influence lingered, whispering through dreams, guiding their monstrous sons toward even darker deeds. The Nephilim were not content with power. They sought worship. They demanded to be called gods. And mankind, broken and terrified, obeyed. From the deserts to the seas, humans raised idols in their image, golden figures with the faces of angels and the bodies of beasts. They prayed for rain, for harvest, for protection. But the rain brought storms, the harvest rotted, and protection turned to slavery. The giants ruled as tyrants, kings of blood, lords of ruin. The book of Enoch says their size was beyond comprehension, 300 cubits tall, their voices like thunder, their eyes burning like molten gold. Yet within those eyes was something more than cruelty. There was sorrow, a faint, dying ember of what their fathers once were. They had been born of rebellion, and rebellion always ends in ruin. As the years passed, their hunger grew. They consumed the beasts of the field, the fish of the sea, and when nothing remained, they turned upon mankind. Villages vanished overnight. Towns were torn apart. Mothers whispered prayers to gods that no longer listened. And in the silence, the heavens wept. The Creator looked upon the earth he had made, an earth now filled with violence and corruption, and his heart was grieved. The time of mercy had ended. Judgment was coming. But first, heaven sent warnings. Enoch again was lifted in visions. He saw mountains collapsing, oceans rising, stars falling from the firmament. He saw the sons of the watchers devouring each other. And he knew the flood was near. He spoke to the people, but they laughed. They said the giants were gods. They said no water could drown them. The Nephilim, proud and defiant, raised their weapons to the sky and shouted, "If heaven wants to destroy us, let it come." And heaven heard. Far away, in the shadow of distant mountains, Noah began to build. A man mocked by the world, a carpenter preparing for rain in a land that had never seen it. Each hammer strike was a prophecy, each plank a warning. And still the people watched and scoffed. But among them, a few began to wonder. They saw the skies darkening earlier, the wind carrying a scent of change, the rivers swelling beyond their banks. And in the dreams of kings and soldiers, visions of drowning came again and again. The Nephilim tried to resist fate. They built cities higher, walls thicker, and altars greater than before. They believed that height could save them, that stone could defy God. But no wall stands against judgment. No mountain shelters from the storm of heaven. The Book of Giants, a fragment from the Dead Sea Scrolls, tells us that some of them began to repent. They saw the visions of destruction and trembled. They sent dreams to Enoch, begging him to plead for their lives. But the answer was silence. The decree had already been sealed. One by one, the Nephilim began to turn on each other. Their pride became madness, their power a curse. They fought among themselves, brother against brother, giant against giant, until the valleys ran red. Their screams shook the heavens, and the mountains echoed their fall. The air grew heavy with death. Even the animals hid from the light. And Noah, from his ark, felt the first drop of rain. The giants looked to the sky and laughed. They had seen storms before, but this was different. The clouds were alive, rolling, twisting, merging into something vast and eternal. Lightning tore through the heavens like veins of fire. Thunder rolled like the voice of God. The rain began to fall, at first gentle, then furious. Streams became rivers. Rivers became oceans. And still, the rain did not stop. The giants roared in anger. They waded through the floodwaters, their strength unmatched, their cries echoing like lost gods. But the water rose higher. Their steps grew slower, their voices softer. Their great towers crumbled. Their cities vanished beneath waves. Even the highest peaks were swallowed. And for the first time since they were born, the Nephilim knew fear. Some tried to climb toward the heavens. Others sank willingly, their pride finally broken. And the earth, which had suffered under their weight, was silent again when the waters covered all. The world was reborn in grief. The giants were gone, the watchers bound in darkness, and humanity reduced to a single family. But not all traces of the Nephilim disappeared. Some say their spirits lingered, restless and bitter, the shadows that would one day become the demons of legend. Others say a few of them survived, hidden in caves or mountains, their blood diluted but not forgotten. And in the ages that followed, stories of giants returned. In Canaan, in Babylon, in the lands of the Philistines, men spoke of Goliath, of Og, king of Bashan. Giants born long after the flood. Were they remnants? Echoes? Or had the watchers found another way to whisper into the world? No one knew. But the fear remained, because the earth that forgets its monsters is doomed to meet them again. In the silence after the storm, Noah stepped from the ark. The air was clean, the world empty. He looked across the wasteland that had once been a kingdom of giants, and he wept. The promise of a new beginning had come at the cost of an old world. But somewhere beneath the mud and ruin, bones the size of mountains slept. And in the whisper of the wind, the memory of the Nephilim still stirred. The waters receded slowly, like a wounded beast retreating into silence. The world that emerged was not the same. The mountains stood bare and scarred, and the soil, once fertile, carried the memory of judgment. Noah and his family stepped into a world reborn, a world washed clean but not untouched. The rain had ended, but the echo of the Nephilim lingered in the air. It was in the stillness of the valleys, in the bones buried deep beneath the mud, in the whisper of the wind that moved across the new land. Some say that when Noah's sons wandered into distant territories, they found signs of the old world, giant tools buried in the sand, massive stones carved by forgotten hands, and ruins that defied understanding. The flood had ended their reign, but not their story, for stories have a way of surviving, especially the dark ones. Generations passed, kingdoms rose and fell, and in every land, new names emerged for the same ancient memory. In Canaan, they were called Rephaim, the long-dead spirits who once ruled the earth. In Babylon, they were Anunnaki, the gods who descended from the heavens. In Greece, they became titans, fallen immortals, who defied the divine. Different names, different myths, but one shadow. It was as if the memory of the Nephilim had scattered like seeds across human imagination, sprouting wherever fear met mystery. And sometimes those memories felt too real to dismiss. The ancient Israelites, when they came to the borders of Canaan, sent spies into the land. When they returned, they said, "We saw the Nephilim there, the sons of Anak, descendants of the giants. We were like grasshoppers in our own sight." How could that be? Had they returned? Or had the blood of the watchers survived in hidden veins, waiting for the right time to awaken again? The scriptures are silent, but silence is not always denial. Sometimes it is protection. Perhaps the truth was too heavy for man to bear again. In the shadows of history, fragments continue to surface. Ruins built with stones no modern tool could move. Skeletons far larger than human hands could craft. Legends of mountain gods and sky warriors found in every culture on Earth. Coincidence? Or the faint pulse of a truth buried under time? There are scholars who say the Nephilim were metaphors, symbols of human pride and corruption. But symbols do not leave footprints. They do not inspire the same stories across continents and centuries. Maybe the Bible did not try to hide them. Maybe it tried to warn us. Because what happened before can happen again. The book of Enoch speaks of spirits left behind, souls of the giants who drowned but did not die. It says they became wandering spirits upon the earth, restless, vengeful, seeking bodies to inhabit. These, it says, are the origin of demons, the disembodied remnants of a forbidden union. They crave what they once had: flesh, sensation, dominion. They whisper through dreams, tempt through desire, and rebuild their kingdom not with stone, but through the hearts of men. And if that is true, then the age of the Nephilim never really ended. It only changed form. Centuries later, prophets would speak again of giants in metaphor, of nations that devour nations, of kings who exalt themselves as gods, of civilizations that rise high and fall harder. The spirit of the Nephilim is not just in blood or bone. It is in the pride that defies heaven, in the hunger that knows no end, in the desire to become more than mortal, even at the cost of the soul. The giants may have fallen, but their shadow lives on, in empires, in idols, in every heart that chooses power over obedience. Some claim their return was prophesied, that in the last days, as it was before the flood, so shall it be again, that the boundaries between heaven and earth will weaken once more, that forbidden knowledge will rise again, dressed in the garments of science, carrying the same ancient promise: you shall be as gods, and humanity, as before, will listen. We already build machines in our own image. We reach toward the heavens with towers of light and steel. We decode the secrets of life and call it progress. But perhaps it is just the same story, repeating under a different name. Perhaps the Nephilim do not need bodies anymore. Perhaps they only need our will. The world turns, ages pass, and yet the whispers remain. In the deep places of the earth, legends speak of beings who still slumber, watchers bound until the time of the end. And when the last veil is torn, they will rise again, not to rule, but to witness. The same watchers who once descended in lust will descend again in judgment, and man once more will stand trembling beneath the weight of what he invited. But not all stories end in despair, because even within the darkness of the Nephilim, there lies a warning wrapped in mercy. The flood was not only wrath, it was renewal, a reset, a reminder that corruption cannot outlive creation. Every generation carries its own giants, its own temptations, its own rebellion against the divine, and every generation must decide whether to fight them or become them. The true lesson of the Nephilim is not about size or power. It is about surrender, the refusal to submit created monsters once. It can do so again, But the same God who judged also redeems. The same heaven that sent the storm still offers a way out of the flood. If the giants were born of desire, then perhaps salvation is born of humility. So when you hear their name, Nephilim, do not think only of ancient bones and legends. Think of the part of you that wrestles with the divine, the part that wants to know too much, to rise too high, to see what should remain unseen. Because in that struggle lies the oldest truth of all, that the greatest battle between heaven and earth was never fought with swords or storms, but within the human heart. And that is the truth they never wanted you to know.